and welcome to Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. I'm Darla Phillips, a host and producer, along with fellow screenwriters Sarah Hopkins and Rebecca Williams-Spindler. Join us as we share our experiences navigating careers in film and television. Add in the twist that we're women of faith, entering into life's second season, and you might find yourself mumbling under your breath. Good luck with that, ladies. Follow along for some guaranteed laughs, a cry or two, and some valuable screenwriting and industry perspective. Anyone with a dream will enjoy this podcast video. Hope you join in. And remember, we gotta enjoy the journey. Well, back again for our third episode here at the cabin in northern Wisconsin. We're having a great time and so grateful for Sarah for hosting us here and for her family for allowing us to do this here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Shout out to my fam.
Yes.
They're amazing. So
Thank
generous.
you. Thank you. So, all right. Well, we're just going to hop right in.
Mm-hmm.
Before we do our 3 Fs, our topic today is about character arcs, and I titled it Characters, Their Arcs, and Yours. So we'll get into that title in a minute. But first we're going to do our 3 Fs. Let's go frustration, final draft, and get the frustration out.
Get the frustration out
Let's
first.
start with Becky.
All right.
Sure.
So, because, we're talking about characters and their arcs and stuff, the project that I'm working on right now, I did send it off for some notes. The notes that I got back, thank you, Tammy. Shout out to Tammy. Were beautiful notes, but they were also very valuable notes, constructive notes that I could actually build from. But her note had to deal with the main character point of view, POV. And she's like, you've got the 10,000 foot view going on right now, but she goes, I would be more intrigued if you gave me the protagonist's point of view. So I have to feel like I got to go back a little bit and think this through, but I'm halfway through the project, so I don't want to start rewriting from page 1. I'm just going to plow through on the path that I was on and then kind of meld it from there. Because I feel like I'm not ready to backpedal right now. I've got to keep this train going. So let's just get to the finish line and then go back and rework it.
That can definitely be frustrating.
It's a good plan.
So I'll go right into that with my final draft. So having a finished script that you think is done, and it literally says when you title it, blankety blank title, final. You're like, oh, I never have to go back to that. Guess what? You always have to go back to that. So right now, my final draft of a project that had been done a year ago that has gone out has come back with some notes of like, we need to introduce a little bit of diversity in a way that doesn't come across like the token Black female or the token Asian or, in a way that you're just swapping out, because those voices need to resonate across every single page. So the decision to go back and look at the diversity piece in it, and what's really interesting is we've had a lot of notes come back and people of color are like, no, that's not what the story is. And so they're like, but address the fact that the pink elephant is in the room. So it's addressing the fact of diversity or lack thereof it is what this town is, and why that's a piece of what the story narrative is. So the final draft is the final draft until you have to go back into the final draft. And so that's what we're working on, trying to make that and do it in a right way. And we're being very careful how we're doing that. So that's the final draft of our 3 Fs.
Those great. Okay, well I'm taking on the faith piece today, and for me, I was thinking about this last night. I was laying down to try and sleep.
Sleep is overrated.
Yes. For me, my faith thing right now is very intertwined with friendship and family, and how we've talked a lot about in our lives, like where we are women who we like to have control of things. We want to have control of what's happening in our lives.
We are driving this bus every day.
Yes. But then how life is kind of, we've all had those moments where we kind of get taught, like, guess what? You're not in control.
Zero control.
And then I think when we get past that and we kind of let God take the wheel,
just how we end up in the places we need to be in our life.
Yeah.
And
100%.
yeah, like we're with the people that need us, and we just get there organically. And so I was just thinking of, just since the first of the year, I feel like there's so many. First of all, I feel like I've been out everywhere. I feel like it's whirlwind. I've been like sleeping in so many different places and beds by myself.
She has a home.
With
In case you're
family.
wondering, she's
With
not homeless.
family.
Yeah, I got a grandkid in the bed with me. No other man or anything like that. Usually, yeah, grandkid kicking me in the side. But anyhow, I was thinking, this one moment came to mind where I had literally just driven into town, gotten into my daughter's house, and one of my granddaughters was sitting down to. She had been selected as one of the top 10 of her class, and selected to. She could put in a She could write a speech that would be maybe selected for graduation night. And she was so funny. She was just sitting there going, no. She's like, I don't like to speak. I don't want to be a speaker. What do I have to say? And I'm sitting there screaming like, your voice is exactly what they need to hear.
Yeah.
This is 10:30 at night. Deadline's midnight. This girl's brilliant. She did not need me to tell her what to say or write anything for her. She did that all on her own, but she just needed that little extra push that your voice matters. People do want to hear from you. And anyhow, I just think what a precious moment that I was able to get there in the nick of time to give her that little extra push. Her parents were pushing her too. They are amazing parents, so they don't really need me, but I like to weed my way in.
They need you.
But yeah, 2 days ago, my daughter sent me a little email that she had been selected to give. So I made the store like crying. I'm still crying because it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, I was at the right place at the right time to get my little grandma push, nano push. So anyway, that's my little faith moment. Sorry, I'm going to be a boober today, I guess.
I love it.
So,
Well, we're going to talk about how we push our characters.
Yeah,
yes,
like
exactly.
this is like how that shows your character.
Oh,
in your
thank
role as a
you.
grandma. So you're amazing.
Oh my
That's
gosh, I
awesome.
don't know about that.
Yeah.
I love your
Thank you.
transparency and being real. That's why we do this. We're pretty
Yes,
real and pretty raw here.
We are, and thank you for that. What happens here stays here. And we cut out the stuff. We cut out the rest.
At the
At
cabin.
the cabin. Oh my gosh, we've had such a great time. So, all right, well, I'm going to jump right into the topic of characters, their arcs and yours. My very first question is, what's your process for developing characters? And now while you guys kind of think about that, I'm going to share a little bit about what Ken Atchity said. It was on an interview on Film Courage. I love Film Courage. If you ever want to check out YouTube and check out some of their interviews, they're awesome.
Resource.
And Ken is a producer, an author, and so many, oh my goodness, columnist. He has a company that has helped people develop things for TV and movies. Anyhow, the first thing he said right off the bat that resonated with me was that character develops itself. He also said you need to figure out, what is the problem the character faces? Is it a clear problem? What's the character's problem interfering with? Like, what's their mission in life? If you're trying to create this arc for your character, how does the character change? What is the arc? And then I love this last one. He said, check your character against traditional characters that have worked well in other movies. So of these bullet points, did anything kind of resonate with you on how you, your process for developing character?
Well, I know, as someone that reads other people's material, I'm always looking for what's the problem? What's the problem that the character is facing? And if I don't get a feeling of the problem by the bottom of page 2, then I'm like, well, where is this going? Because yes, you introduce the character. Yes, you introduce the world that the character's in. But if I don't get a feel for where this is going right off the bat, if there's just too much flowy stuff and we don't get the problem until the bottom of page 10, I think that's too far along. I think we need to know what is the thing that this guy didn't expect to happen today.
Like, why I picked this topic was that this feature script that I just, like Sarah just said, final draft, but not really final draft, but for the next phase coming, has so many characters. It's like, oh my gosh, 9 basically an ensemble cast of 9 characters with all their arcs and then some side characters. And that's what inspired me to take on this one, because I'm thinking, I just tackled this monstrous script with all these characters, and each had to have a voice. Each had to have an arc. You needed to feel each character in them.
Like, piggybacking on both of that, it's like, okay, what's this character's problem? And then how do you make that character interesting and authentic and unique when you're pushing it up against of like, how is this going to be different? Like, you think of Forrest Gump, you know, like what his problems were and how that manifested over a movie and how that manifested for the story and the plot and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I'm like, okay, I know what this character's problem is. And then I do the deep dive of like, I want to know everything about that character. So when I first started writing, before I was even writing screenplays, I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not an English major. Like, I don't know how to develop a character. Like, I'm reading all these how to write your first novel books. They're like, develop your character. Like, oh my gosh, how do you do that? So I read a whole bunch of articles, and there was always some really great resources where you can get like, they're almost like worksheets. Where it's like, what would your character do if they were an island with blah, blah, blah? Or, you know, like these kinds of things that get you thinking about who this character is outside of their conflict. Because I'm like, how is that character going to react in that conflict? And to me, that's what makes a character interesting, because if it's the same reaction to the conflict that you and I would have, well, that's boring. Like, let's figure out enough about that character's backstory to be able to figure out how that character is going to interact with his world and his problem. So it's figure out the conflict first, and then it's like, ooh, who is this? And so it's the deep dive into figuring out who that character is. And I love how you always talk about like, you've worked on these characters intrinsically. I'm like, well, I'm not that deep. I'm like, give me a worksheet and I'll figure it out.
I'm
and then
a big fan of
it.
worksheets too, or just sitting down and doing a paragraph about this person, your protagonist. You know, go ahead and write their backstory. Did they graduate from high school? Have they been in the dating world? Who has wounded them? We've talked about the world.
We'll talk about that
right.
And and it, to me, that's a fun exercise. Is to like, and the other, I don't know if we've talked about this in other episodes, doing a want ad.
A want ad. Oh yeah, like who you're looking for. Just that's a great
gosh.
idea. Great idea.
I love that.
Or who this particular character, how he would write a want ad for either his sidekick or his lover. You know,
I love it.
And so I do think that's when Ken actually says, a character develops itself. I think he's not saying that you just start writing and I don't know, maybe he is saying that you start writing and here comes the character. I think it's exactly what you guys are saying. I mean, obviously we've talked about, I don't do the worksheets because I feel like some of these characters have been in my life. They're like going 30 years. Like, hey, when do I get to speak?
She has voices in her head. The voices again, which is awesome.
But I really think when you put that character in the situation, that's what he's talking about. Just put them in the most uncomfortable situation you can imagine. The development's going to happen almost on its own. Once you get them in that situation, it's going to force you to figure out. So I think that's what he means, is like, just get them in that awkward place and it's going to work itself out. But it's important that they have an arc and a voice, and we feel each character is a little bit different. All right. Thank you guys. Anything else on that?
I just thought the last point about, check against traditional characters that have worked well. I'm like, well, if I'm writing a detective movie, I don't really know if I want to compare my main character to Sherlock Holmes.
True.
I want this guy to be original, authentic, and maybe different. So to me, I'm not trying to make my people mainstream or, because for two reasons. One, that's been done before, and I want to be more creative than that. And second, if I want a producer or someone to pick this up and read it, they've run umpteen Sherlock Holmes type stories already. So that one's a little tricky.
Well, and I think he's not meaning. I think he means like the character arc, like what's worked. Like, because really think about it, there's a lot of different characters who have very similar arcs. But I'm gonna say butthole. Thank you, Leanne, from last night. We watched this funny comedy last night. Leanne Morgan.
Yes. On Netflix, fantastic.
I'm gonna go with her. But I can't say it Southern. Butthole. But you got the character that starts as a big a-hole and arcs to being a nice guy. You know, I mean, so I guess that's what I'm thinking. A more general. He's saying like, look at the arcs that have worked, like general arcs that have worked in other characters. But you're right, we don't want to go just create the same thing that's already out there. Another film, Courage. This is from Gary Goldstein. He's a writer. I've listened to him a few times, and I like a lot of what he has to say. But he just specifies that every process is different. And he is the one who says, put your characters in a place they don't want to be. Number one. The character can have a misbehavior that needs to change. And then he talks about who needs to come into the character's life to help that change happen. And then this part I really like, and maybe I'll hit this one again later, but this is where he says, we are our main characters. And he says, they are us. We're infusing them with our point of view. But then he says, not necessarily our values and our history, but we are infusing in them a point of view that we think they should have. And then he talks about knowing the character's journey. So I love, like we just showed, every process is different. We all talked about how you guys are more, you like the worksheets. I'm more of like the Post-it note lady. Once it comes to me, then I write it on a note and put it on the wall and mess around with it. And it's okay. Everyone's got their process, and that's totally fine. Put your characters in places they don't want to be. Okay, think of your stuff.
Well, I'm thinking of how many movies or TV shows have we watched where the opening scene is somebody in a job they hate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that out there, you know, or they live in a town they hate. So they want to get out of town, or they want to get out of this job.
I was thinking the script that I just finished up, I titled it Prego High. Now, right away, Prego High. Who wants to be at Prego High? Like, every character in that's a crap situation. So right there, it opens up, just like you said, put them in a situation you don't want to be in, and boom. You can see, oh my goodness, yes, this is the arcs. They're going to have so many different character arcs going on. So I don't know, think of your scripts. What situation? Think of like Fett. What?
Right. So my main character for the opening of Fett is she's a grunt Marine. She's changing oil. She's never going to get off the base. The nickname is called a fobbit because you never leave the fob, and she's a female in the military. And this is, my story takes place before women were allowed in combat roles. So it's like, she knows, like, legally, she's never getting off that base, even though she's watching and she's seeing all of these other male units that are able to go out and, be a bigger part of the war, and something that maybe she just never knew she had that opportunity. She would never have that opportunity to. And then that is basically how that whole thing starts. Guess what? That opportunity is coming. They're trying to figure out a way to get these women out into the field with these male teams, essentially, because men cannot speak to Afghan women. And so the idea was get these women with these teams, and they're going to call them, we're going to attach them instead of being a part of the teams, because they're trying to make all the political lines blurry. And this is all based off of real life stories. And so that reading for me when I was developing that, the inspiration of all of these news articles, and I'm reading these amazing articles about these women that are finally allowed to, and technically they weren't allowed in combat, but hello, you're out. You're going to be fighting the Taliban, and these women did before it was technically legal for them to serve in combat roles. And so that was my, and sometimes that's your inciting incident that puts your character into that position. But that character, like my main character, was like, oh man, it'd be great to get out there, but I'll never be able to. And that's what you want your character to go through. And then the adventure, and then, how it's so layered with dealing with, all the males that are like, what are they doing here? And then all the, the people in the town are like, whoa, girls in uniform, what is this? So, and again, I'm boiling it down to very basic. But it can be very.
She started out in a situation that she was uncomfortable
with. My pilot, The Stay List, which is based on an organ procure coordinator. I can say that 3 times fast. Organ procurement coordinator. That's the right term. So this is the person that works on the transplant unit. Is the go-between the list, people that are on the list, and working, on the unit in kind of a nursing role, and then you're also helping the families deal with the patient who's on the list. And then you get the call that you need to go retrieve a heart, kidney, lung and you're with the team with the cooler. And so mine opens up with the girl in the ambulance with the cooler, and they get T-boned, and there's a horrible accident. And now what? The clock's ticking. This patient is waiting for this heart that's in this cooler. And so, you need this action because that's the medical drama part of a pilot. So she jumps out of the ambulance after she makes sure the driver's okay. Of course, she, does her medical stuff with his wound and whatnot. Jumps out and flags down a FedEx driver and says, "Take this to the hospital now. You go." And so there's the stuff that's happening at the hospital. The patient's waiting. The surgery team's waiting for this cooler to arrive. And then the mother of the young patient who's waiting is it going to get here in time? This is the third call that they've had, and the other two have fallen through, and they're hoping that this is really going to happen today.
All your characters are thrown into a situation right away, away that's going to help define.
Yeah. And so my show has the perspective of the families that are waiting for it, the patient that's waiting for it, and then the team that's trying to fulfill that task of giving them that organ successfully.
So I really think you may not need all your worksheets, girls. You just put them in a bad situation, and it's all going to play out.
So it says that the character has a misbehavior that needs to change. Well, what about the character at the end of the movie that just didn't really change? Might have learned about his behavior, but didn't really necessarily change his behavior.
Okay.
So sometimes that's the water cooler movie where people are talking about it later, and that might be the Oscar-worthy one. And I think those kind of characters are also interesting because they're just an a-hole to be an a-hole.
Honestly, I think that, the Breaking Bad character, Walter White or whatever, how his desperation, that was what he was going to all the desperate measures to try to take care of his family, and then all of the crap that happens in between there. I mean, it's brilliant.
Well, he became empowered. So.
Right. So that is an arc. That's change.
Yes.
Even though,
although he started misbehaving.
Right. Right.
But that's an arc.
Yeah, it is, and that's what's important about it. Think of the movie Tootsie.
Yeah,
he was this total male chauvinist at the beginning, and then he's got to become a woman.
Yeah.
Find
out what it's like.
Right. That's an interesting arc. Yeah. I love movies like that. Some of those, I feel like we don't see enough of those anymore.
Right.
I feel like it's the opposite.
Yeah.
We go from, we have the Walter Whites, and I'd rather see the Tootsies.
The ones that learn to behave, not misbehave.
Right.
But it's a twist, and that's why Breaking Bad went so bonkers. On this question where he talks about, we are our main characters. How do you feel about this? Do you agree with this? They are us, we are infusing them with our point of view. Not necessarily our values or history, but do you feel like you're giving your characters a point of view you think they should have? So you've created this arc, you've created this character with their flaws. Once you know what your character is and where they need to go and grow and what their backstory is, you can kind of put yourself in their point of view. So it's not like you're always giving your POV, it's that you're just infusing them with, it's almost like you're putting yourself in their shoes, and then
that's the fun part.
Yes, and then you're writing the dialogue from that perspective.
I love that you just brought up dialogue, because I feel like when you're reading a screenplay, and if it sounds like your voice throughout the whole thing, guess what? And that's always why table reads are important. That's why you have other people read your stuff. If all of your characters talk the same, that means that the arcs are probably going to be pretty similar. If you have all the same characters, that's a reflection of you not really getting into the uncomfortable shoes. You got into that character's comfy shoes, because that's you. Get really uncomfortable with your characters, because think about that. When we get uncomfortable, what comes out of our mouth? Raw, real. What we're really after. We get like that when we get uncomfortable. Your true character shows when you get uncomfortable. Right? So my daughter was moving into her apartment with her boyfriend, which I'm sure people will have something to say about that. But I was like, sometimes moving is when you see people's true colors.
Ooh,
Yes.
Right? And I was kind of like watching. I'm like, okay, let's see him turn into. And he was amazing. He was so good. I'm like, it gave my mama's heart such a, like, I was like, okay, he just went, like, going through a crisis with somebody or going through a hard thing with somebody. Like, if you're going to go trek for 10 miles with somebody, it's different than trekking 30 miles with somebody. Like, to have the pressure of that, to strip off all of the, okay, I'm on my best behavior. Don't put your character on their best behavior. Put them in their worst behavior. That's what, like, and you don't start there. Like, you kind of have to start there a little bit, but like, that's what we want to see in your characters is their true colors. Put them moving in with their spouse or moving in with their boyfriend or girlfriend, like,
or working on the bathroom, putting in a shower.
With my stories, I do not intentionally. It just happens where the same wound comes out.
Our wound, my wound.
But each one of my stories has a character that deals with it so differently.
Yes, that's.
But it's so weird if I go back and read it. Like, yep. So maybe I need therapy.
Yes,
writing is therapy.
It is.
But it's so weird how it just.
You're like, there it is.
There.
And you can have twists on it. Just, I mean, people. So many people have the same wound in their life and they just handle it differently. All right. So now, okay, there's internal arcs and external arcs. This is pretty self-explanatory, but I loved Ken Miyamoto.
There he is again.
Yes.
We're your biggest fan.
Yes, we are. He had a great, I thought it was a good quote about what is an internal arc. And it's super common sense, but it says in an external arc, if an external arc is what we see the character go through physically, the internal arc is what we feel the character go through. And I thought, whoa, that's so important. Not just to see it, but to feel it. And everyone knows by now I'm a big feeler.
Sometimes people talk about like wants versus needs and how that character, like what that character thinks they need at the beginning or want at the beginning is not really what they need.
Yes.
And like how you figure that out with, because it's screenwriting, you have to be very physical. You're showing things. You're not hearing what they're saying in their head unless they're breaking the fourth wall. But that's a unique way to tell a story. But yeah, I think that the physical, showing it physically what they're internalizing can sometimes, the show don't tell. But then how that changes throughout the script of what they're actually really going through and what that arc is going to come back and be that's the magic.
Yes, that is the art of screenwriting. Is this crazy way you condense the story into these few lines of dialogue and a quick visual, and it gives you that, oh my gosh, you feel it in your heart, you see what's happening and you feel it and no one has to say it or tell you. And
I like to teach the concepts when I'm teaching writing, that each scene or each chapter, visual or whatever, has to have 4 things. To me, it's action, reaction, tension, and hope.
That's good.
So you have something happen to so-and-so. How are they reacting to it? Either they do a behavior, or it comes through in the attitude of their dialogue, or you see it on their face. And then there's tension, right? Because they're still dealing with this conflict, obstacle, whatever it is that you've created. So there's tension going on there. But yet you want your antagonist, or protagonist, I should say, have some kind of hope that they're getting towards the end of their journey. They're still
that you will yank out later.
There has to be
hope.
Exactly.
The hope will be gone.
As viewers and as readers, we are cheering for this person. Come on, you can, do it. So that's the hope. And so for me, each one of those things, action, reaction, tension, hope, comes through internally and externally.
I love that. Thank you. They do. They work together. You have to, especially in screenwriting. It's the magic, I think. I think when you said that is where the magic happens, when you somehow, some way blend the emotion with the physical. All right. Thank you, Ken.
Cheers, sir.
I know. So how does your personal character play into writing characters? And I love this article that Lee Jessup put out, that it's all about character. She said, not the traditional approach towards your protagonist or antagonist, the internal journey or character arcs. Instead, it relates to these 2 specific areas: one writing related, the other connected to your personal presentation. She just put out there like a general meeting, meetings in which you are invited to meet an executive without being asked to talk at any great length about a specific project are all about your personal narrative. And I love this quote. She said, a single screenplay, be it a feature spec or an original television pilot, will rarely hold the same long-term potential as the writer who created it. And so this is where
it's soul crushing in a way, because you're like, it's the thing I worked so hard for. This should speak for me. But it is, and that's part of the business side of it. Like, if you know you just want to tell stories and write great screenplays, with the hope that it's going to get out there, you're gonna have to learn how to play the game. You have to learn how to be in the room, and you have to, as much as this is your baby. The baby's you have to be willing to, again, think of it literally physically. Your script is in your back pocket. They need to get to your script through you first. You have to present yourself. You have to know how your personal narrative and how you're presenting your story, how it pertains to you, why this project, why now, and being able to know that and to have it feel authentic when you're talking to somebody in a room that is the magic gold dust that you need, and you have to figure out how to do that in the right way, and it's difficult.
So Lee Jessup is my mentor, and I've worked with Lee for years, and so what she has told me, because I am outside of LA, I am way outside of LA, she has told me that my writing's got to shine. In order for her to pass me along with somebody else, or for me to just get on somebody's radar. Your writing's got to be ultra fantastic, polished, with a message that they haven't seen yet, or whatever. And then once somebody in LA does call you up or does say, let's do a Zoom or come on out for a general, then yes, then you have to be prepared to just be yourself. Because you wrote something awesome that attracted them in the first place, and they want to get to know you. And like Sarah said, they want to know what inspired you to write this and what's your connection to this. Is it something that you made up? Probably not, because you were inspired to write it based on something you read or you experienced or you saw. And they want to know what your connection is to the material. And so that is when they get to know you. And maybe this particular piece that attracted them in the first place is similar to something that they've got sitting here that they're looking for a writer to do. And that is how you break in. You get an assignment. It's 99.9% not going to be this wonderful shining thing that you made. It's the 0.001% of you getting an assignment that's kind of similar, or the voice that you created in your project is similar to the voice that they've been looking for this project over here. So that's what Lee says. You, as a worker bee, is going to last longer in this industry than this wonderful thing that you wrote.
Well, and it's the impression you left, because if you come back up in that person's mind later, you left an impression that they're like, so that's the impression you leave, and the vibe you bring and the energy you bring is so important, I think.
And believe it or not, LA is a small world.
It really is.
Because when you have a meeting with this person, and maybe this assignment that they thought that you'd be perfect for, it isn't the right thing, but they know someone else that is looking for a writer that's like you, and they might refer you to someone else. So
and it's also interesting because the same execs that were the execs 6 months ago are not the same. Like things change a lot. You might be an emerging writer working with a younger exec or whatever, or staff, whatever. You're working with somebody that is kind of the gateway person. Pretty soon, they're higher up and they know you. You don't have to go to the gateway person anymore. So it's important to know that hopefully all the ships rise together, which is why you have to have good relationships, and you should be working on your craft, but you should also be networking and trying to figure out ways to get into rooms. And that comes from great projects. That comes from great personal narrative. That comes from things that happen in your life. I think one of the things for me is like, my coming into the brand was, veteran female writer. And now I'm like, okay, also I can adapt. I can, you're growing yourself, And when you're growing yourself, like opens other doors for other opportunities. So that one script that got you in that room, you're going to evolve.
Yep.
And those people that you're making connections with are going to evolve as well. Like your story should evolve. So be looking for the next way to grow yourself so that your personal narrative will change along with your projects, because that's what they're looking for. Like to be able to develop something, like you're developing your own career, like you develop your projects.
And I've seen how you are in, like when we've been in front of a producer or in front of managers, and
just be real,
just are
people.
That's
lovable.
what we've been saying all along.
Yes,
It's just be yourself.
leave that good impression.
It's hard to have the self-confidence, but have the self-confidence because they asked you to be there.
Yeah.
So they're interested in you. So
Yeah.
let that sink in.
Be real. Don't be desperate.
Yeah.
And have a great script that you would be, front and backwards, and you know why you're the right person for that story.
Yeah. And then understand the business a bit. You
Yeah.
know, don't be like, okay.
And if there's other things in your wheelhouse and they mention something, mention that's also in your wheelhouse.
Oh yeah. Yep. Especially if they ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think in generals, I don't know. When it's just getting to know you, you just want
Generals
to be
aren't
like,
about your script.
Yeah,
Generals
it's just
about
gonna,
you.
Yeah, it's just gonna let them guide. But if they ask you, oh yeah, for sure. That's how I got my script to Cam. Was we were at dinner and he asked, and I'm like, well, he asked for a different. I did. He asked for a different one. I'm like, no, I'm giving you this one. But anyhow, yeah, great. Thank you guys. This is awesome. So her next thing was the emotional core, and we'll just hit that real quick because we've talked about this before, how important it is. Well, obviously, we all have our own wounds that feed into our writing, which we've already talked about.
Yes.
And your characters all need to have a wound or something that people can resonate with, or watch it and go, oh, that's me. I understand that. I can relate to that. So she says it's all about the emotional core. If you don't have a character with a unique wound, an enticing backstory, and a powerful secret to uncover or hold to boot, the concern is that it would be hard to develop the sort of show that would keep audiences engaged week after week. So, while the world has to be unique and interesting, the plot rife with potential, it is not likely to hold their interest unless it comes complete with a protagonist who is both complex and wounded.
I think that, some folks that write in different genres like comedy or romance feel like, well, it's comedy or it's romance, so do they have to be complex and wounded? Yes, they do. To me, it's more interesting. Even if it's comedy or even if it's romance.
Oh my gosh,
make
yes.
that person complicated.
Oh yeah.
You can make them complicated in a funny way, but make them complicated.
But what about a Hallmark? Like we've talked about this, like a Hallmark or a Christmas show.
I think they're changing a little bit and looking for more of those intricacies and complications for their.
They've usually had a little
characters.
heartbreak.
Yeah.
They've had in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, I guess there's always a wound, even in a Christmas Hallmark. So what are some of your favorite films that you thought had great characters with great arcs?
One of the first things that if you ever go to a writing fellowship or you start reading any books, one of the first films that they will tell you that you have to watch and dissect and rewatch like 40 times is The Godfather.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Michael Corleone. I'm not killing that.
You're better than
like
I am.
his arc and what his story is. That you think of the opening scenes when they're at the wedding, right? And you're watching, he's like, that's my family. Like, I'm not that. I'm not that.
Right.
And at the end, he is that.
Yeah.
So that whole arc and the love and the loss and the, growth, lack of growth, the deterioration to also the emotional part of what his arc is like. Even if you're not a big mob movie, just watch it just to watch his arc. Like, see what he says at the beginning of the film and see what he says at the end of the film. And you can use that in your own writing. Like, what's the first thing out of my character's mouth? What's the last thing out of my character's mouth? What's the first thing my character does? What is the last thing my character does? So, like, that's how sometimes you can look at, and that arc might start and end at that exact same place or that same location. Think about how, films start in that one, in that one restaurant or that whatever. Like, what has that character gone through to then get back to the same spot? And what was that adventure? What was that journey? What was that emotional piece of how they either grew or loved, lost, whatever? So I feel like The Godfather is probably, to me, I feel like that's one of the films that shows a huge arc.
And I love what you said, like just go to the first statement, compare it to the ending statement. Don't even have to watch the whole thing. I'm kidding. But you should. Watch it. And I've watched it many times because my husband loves it so much. But The Breakfast Club. I thought, what?
That was one of my on my list.
Yes, what a... First of all, can talk about contained. Dang it! I mean, contained they're in detention in the library. You can feel so many different characters. Their arcs. They all have an arc. They all change by the end. And it's mostly dialogue and sitting there.
Right, and that works because it's universal. Like we've all gone through high school.
Yes.
We were all in one, group or whatever you want to call it. We've all experienced that, which is why you can get away with it being contained, because we all know that world. You don't have to show us an adventure in a high school. Like, we've already been there, done that. But the adventure was in the character's arc.
Yes, I put Braveheart on here because I love Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson again. I still love you.
Braveheart too.
But Braveheart, I just think how he was in the beginning, just a young dude wanting to just fall in love and have a family, raise a family, and then the arc he went through to become, basically a martyr for the cause.
Right. The calling. Like, I think that's a good device in character and plot and all that kind of stuff of like, the calling, what you're willing to go through to fulfill that and what you're willing to lose to go and fulfill that.
Exactly. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Here for you, girl.
Thank you.
I'm going to go with Legally Blonde.
I love Legally Blonde.
So you have, Elle Woods at the beginning where she's privileged. She comes from, a lot of money. And she's beautiful, and so she pretty much gets anything she wants and whatnot. And then the complication or the problem is the love interest is getting accepted to Yale or Harvard Law School, and she thinks that I'll just do it too. And I love underachievers or the underdog story, where the protagonist is like, I'll show you. And so I love those kind of stories. And so, we're interested in Elle. She's nice to look at. She's quirky. She's funny. She's got a cute little dog. And then she does it. She actually applies herself and shocks everyone because she has this intelligence that she's just kind of patted down to like live up the exterior part of herself. And when she gets in touch with the interior, the intellect of herself, she even surprises herself.
Yes.
And how everyone at the college, says, oh, poo-poo, what is this one going to do? And then she ends up like blowing away everybody that she's doing well in her studies. And she gets the internship. And then we have a little bit of the Me Too thing happen. That this is the kind of character, because she's beautiful and you think she's, fluff, that she can be taken advantage of. I really liked how that movie came up and said, no. I don't play that. And just because I look like this doesn't mean I do that. So, and then at the end, she becomes her full-fledged lawyer. But because she's quirky, it also touches on how she has her superpower of knowing the different hair products in order to nail the villain.
I love it.
Right?
I don't like to watch movies over and over again. I don't like to read books over and over again. But something about Legally Blonde.
Oh, if it's on, I'm like, well, there's 2 hours. Forget about it.
I love that. I love it. So that's when I can watch over and over again.
Yeah.
So,
and it's got a good message for kids.
Oh,
That's when you can sit down and watch.
Everyone.
It's one of my daughter's favorite movies.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I think kids like it too because it's an underdog story.
Oh yeah, those are really. We all can relate to that. So, anyways, thank you so much. I loved what we shared. Hopefully, it was helpful to anyone watching. Our process. Obviously, we state this all the time. We are just documenting our experiences, trying to figure out this whole journey. So hopefully it's helpful. And I do want to close with one quote because I want to give a little shout out to Danny Manis. I'll follow him on Twitter, and I get on. He has these little Friday evening cocktail hours that he shares industry updates and news.
Darla has a Manhattan. Just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
He put this quote out on Twitter the other day. And I want to share it because it really resonated with me because I think it's all of our goals that we're trying to do with our scripts. And he said so, or he tweeted, what makes a great script? It makes you feel different emotions, not just one. It's unexpected. It's fun, or at least compelling. It has layers to characters and plot. It says something. It delivers on the premise, exploits its hook in original ways, and has a voice I want to read again. So I thought, that's all you gotta do, Pete.
That's awesome. It's a great quote.
It's a great quote,
yeah.
and I thought that is so true. I mean, so thank you, Danny, and he's been a great consultant. So if you have any, you want to try him out, he's kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, say the same for Lee, except she's not a pain in the butt. So yeah.
Well, Danny's proud to be a pain in the butt. Anyhow, well, thank you guys so much. Hope this was helpful, and we'll see you in a few months.
Well, you made it through another episode. Thanks for joining in. For more information on our podcast and videos, be sure to check out our Facebook page with the same title, Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word. This episode of Faith, Final Drafts, and the F Word was filmed and recorded in April of 2023 on a gorgeous waterway in northern Wisconsin. A special thank you to Sarah's parents, Jan and Harold, for allowing us to produce a few of our episodes here on their beautiful property.